Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos and welcome to a Shadowlands Alpha video. So this video is going to be all about the changes that are happening to Outlaw Rogue in particular, my opinion about whether or not they are good or bad, and which ones they are. So let's get into it with kind of core rotational abilities, and then we'll talk a little bit more about spells that have been added back, and then we'll finish off with some talent changes as well. So starting off with core rotational abilities, quite a bit has changed for Outlaw here, with the change to Roll the Bones. So Roll the Bones is no longer a finisher, and it's now just something that you can cast. It costs 50 energy, and it's on a 45-second cooldown. It grants you buffs for 30 seconds. Most of the buffs are the same, except for one, which we'll get to in a bit. And that 45-second cooldown is reduced by Restless Blades, which is the passive where your finishing moves reduce the cooldown of some abilities by 1 second. And of course, True Bearing is currently increasing that to 2 seconds for me, but if I were to click that off, which I'm not even allowed to click this off, apparently this is a protected buff, then it would go back down to 1 second here on this passive. I actually think this is a pretty good change here. I think that Roll the Bones as a finisher, a lot of problems that people had with Outlaw Rogue was that you would get to this playstyle of spamming Roll the Bones, and that's not going to be something you do anymore. You don't spam the ability anymore. You roll the bones, and then you get some buffs for a while, and then sometime towards the end of the buff's range, you get the option to roll again, and you can decide whether you want to or whether you want to keep what you have for a little while longer. So there's still going to be a little bit of gameplay there. There's still going to be a little bit where, you know, people who can identify the good buffs versus the bad buffs for the situation they're in will be able to get a little bit of value from that. But it's not going to be this thing where the correct play is to just never cast, Dispatch until you roll a good finisher. But we do have a new ability that is a new finisher that you're going to have to spend some combo points on from time to time. That is Slice and Dice. So Slice and Dice has now gone off of the talent tree and has become baseline. All rogue specs actually get this. And it costs 1 to 5 combo points, and it gives you a 50% attack speed increase for 6 seconds plus 6 seconds per combo point spent on it. So of course, better to spend more combo points on this thing because it also has an energy cost, and you want to pay that as few times as possible. But it's something that you're going to want to maintain on yourself and increase your attack speed by 50%. And that's a new buff to maintain. So you're still going to be spending some globals, maintaining a buff instead of doing damaging finishers, but it's going to be consistent instead of as much RNG about whether or not you get the good or bad rolls. Getting good rolls versus bad rolls is still going to affect your DPS, but it's not going to affect your, whether or not you get to press your damaging finishers, which I think is a good change. I personally didn't mind the Roll the Bones playstyle, but I think that a lot of people did, and it makes sense to change that. And there's still going to be some skill to playing well around Roll the Bones. Other changes that we see. Blade Flurry is no longer on a 2-charge system. It's now 1 charge on a 33-second cooldown, but that cooldown is reduced by Restless Blades. So, in effect, you can get this thing's downtime very low and its uptime very high, especially if you have a good Roll the Bones buff to accompany it. Something like True Bearing that's going to make Restless Blades double effective. I haven't done the math or anything yet, but I imagine that True Bearing is back on the menu as a good buff as a result of this in AoE because you're going to want Blade Flurry to be active 100% of the time if you can, and I feel like that's going to be enough to reduce its cooldown to close to 0 every time that it finishes going. Blade Flurry's numbers have changed a little bit as well. So the damage coefficient on these by default now, it's 40%, and then it goes up to 45% when you talent into Dancing Steel. On live right now, it's like 35 going up to 40, I think. So I think they buffed the coefficient a little bit on this, if I'm not mistaken. It might even be 30 going up to 35 on live. So a buff to the coefficient of Blade Flurry, but it now only strikes 4 additional nearby targets. So Outlaw is no longer able to effectively deal damage to a 6th or any additional targets beyond that. I'm not a fan of this change. I'm not a fan of this change just for Outlaw. I think that every class should be able to deal damage beyond the 5th target. I do respect that, Outlaw's AoE was really good this past expansion, but I don't think the solution to this and other specs that had good AoE is just blanket make them not able to do damage beyond a certain point. I'd rather instead see a system implemented where, you can hit the first 5 targets with Blade Flurry normally, and then the next 5 targets get hit at reduced effectiveness, and then it stops dealing damage beyond that. That's something like the Twilight Devastation fix that they put in, the nerf to that, and I think that kind of tuning, it means that you're still rewarded for pulling, a 6th enemy, a 7th enemy, if you can. Whereas now there's basically no incentive for an Outlaw Rogue to pull more than 5 enemies because you really can't effectively deal damage to that 6th target anymore. Blade Rush is an ability that will still be able to hit a 6th target. Killing Spree, though, is not. Killing Spree also capped to up to 4 nearby enemies for 100% damage when you have Blade Flurry active. So that is going to be a serious change to how Outlaw works. Outlaw is not alone in receiving these changes, although not every spec is receiving these changes. So again, my opinion on the target cap is that I think it's bad and should be implemented differently. I'm not. I think the goals are reasonable, but I don't like the implementation here of just turning off your damage at that 6th target. So that's something I might make another video on later. Let's get to more of the Outlaw changes. Between the Eyes is getting a pretty serious change to its functionality as well. Between the Eyes no longer stuns, but it does put this kind of Blood of the Enemy style debuff on the target, which increases your crit chance and crit damage against the target by 20%. So my understanding of the way that this is going to work, I'm not 100% sure. I tried to look into this, but I'm still not quite sure what the numbers actually end up being. My understanding of this, though, is that the crit chance is going to translate into AoE with Blade Flurry, but the crit damage is not. But I could be wrong about either half of that. I wasn't able to... I'm too stupid to understand what the numbers mean when I tried to write them down on a notepad document, so I'll just say it could work either way. Either way, though, this is a cool new spot for Between the Eyes to be in, but its cooldown has been increased up to 45 seconds. So even with Restless Blade still reducing it, you're going to have this debuff up on the target for 15 seconds if you spend 5 combo points on it, even more if you talent into Deeper Stratagem. And then it'll be down for a little bit. So this kind of gives you a cool burst window play style. Maybe there's going to be incentive, maybe the correct thing to do is going to be to slice and dice before you're Between the Eyes, so you don't spend combo points on slice and dice during the Between the Eyes window. I don't know what the actual correct rotation is going to be on this yet, but that's kind of my guess on how this should work. Again, the fact that this is such a damage increase, I think is going to make True Bearing a good roll again. And that is a cool change for Between the Eyes. Now, the fact that this doesn't stun anymore, the stun has been brought over to Kidney Shot. Kidney Shot is on a 20-second cooldown, not reduced by Restless Blades. So Outlaw's kind of been brought in line with the other rogue specs, still has that potent utility in Kidney Shot, but it's not also huge parts of their damage. And I think it's probably fair. I think this is a fair change to Outlaw here. Let's talk a little bit more about Roll the Bones and Slice and Dice, because I'm not sure I mentioned this. I mentioned that Roll the Bones, the buffs are mostly the same. One thing that is not the same is Grand Melee. So Grand Melee used to be Leech and Attack Speed. Now instead it's going to be Leech, and every time you use a finisher, you get 2 seconds of Slice and Dice per combo point that you spent on that finisher. So what this means is that you effectively don't have to press Slice and... It probably removes the Slice and Dice cast from your rotation every time you roll a Grand Melee, because you just, extend it all the way back up to full from your other finishers. This is a cool change for me. This is a cool buff, especially because it means that you're going to have to react to your rotation a little bit more. You're going to have to react to your roll and, not cast Slice and Dice when you have Grand Melee up, probably. And I like reacting to Roll the Bones. I think that that's one of the cool skill-based parts of Outlaw Rogue. Let's see, what else has changed here? There's a new talent that's called Coming Soon. So we'll see what that ends up being. That's where Slice and Dice used to be. Night Stalker has replaced Acrobatic Strikes. Acrobatic Strikes gone entirely now, so Outlaw Rogue no longer has extra long arms, no longer gets to stand at an extra 3 yards away, which is a pretty serious thing, actually. Outlaw does that in a lot of places in BFA to great effect, and I think it's probably fair that they don't get to do that. They don't get, you can't just stand away from Trothak's AoE and still effectively damage him anymore. I think that is probably a fair nerf as well to the spec. Night Stalker, I'm not sure if Night Stalker's going to stay here. There's mention that Riposte is going to the talent tree because Riposte is currently gone and it's Evasion. And there's mention that the talent tree somewhere is going to feature Riposte instead. I imagine it'll go on this row and not this row, because I don't imagine you'd ever pick it over something like Alacrity or Loaded Dice. So I think that this Coming Soon talent might be something else new entirely that we haven't seen yet. So that is all of the changes that are in the talent tree in the spellbook. I just want to briefly now mention the Kyrian Covenant ability for rogues, for those of you who don't know exactly how it works. So it's called Echoing Reprimand, and it's pretty good for Outlaw, actually, I think, because it's a little bit easier to control with Outlaw than it is for the other specs. So the way that Echoing Reprimand works is that it deals a bunch of damage up front, and then it builds 3 combo points, costs quite a bit of energy. Well, not quite a bit of energy, actually, for Outlaw. It costs more energy for the other specs, relatively, because Outlaw builds and spends energy a little bit more quickly. And then it ether charges one of your combo points. So I actually have an ether charged combo point right now. This is a permanent debuff permanent buff until you spend it. I have Echoing Reprimand here on 4 combo points. So what that means is that my 4th combo point is ether charged, and if I can spend exactly 4 combo points on something, I will get a 7 combo point effect instead of a 4 combo point effect. So let's see if I can do that on this guy. Of course, a little bit of randomness here. I could have, ended up here without 4 combo points, right? I could have ended up, not proccing my Sinister Strike double hit on the first go, and then I could be on 3 combo points and press Sinister Strike and double hit. So it's sometimes not reliable here. But even if you accidentally overshoot and you accidentally make an extra combo point, you can still then just get it on your next go around. So now that I'm on 4 combo points, I could do my Between the Eyes, right? And that will apply. Okay, well, it turns out that it actually didn't quite work with Between the Eyes there, so maybe that's a bug I need to report. But if I did my Dispatch, for instance, okay, I must have a one-handed melee weapon. I still have daggers equipped right now. Out of trolling. All right, let me put a one-handed melee weapon in here. All right, so if I do my Dispatch, that's going to do damage like I spent 7 combo points on it, theoretically, instead of 4. Although once again there, even though I have this Echoing Reprimand on 4, it's not actually working when I spend 4 combo points. Maybe that's because I logged out with this Echoing Reprimand on 4. I'm going to cast a new Echoing Reprimand. All right, so now I've got one on 3. And now if I spend 3 combo points there, you see it did 2,000 on a crit. Normally a 3 combo point Dispatch would only do 609 damage, but there it did way more. Although still a little bit less than I would expect there. So there's a possibility that the Ether Charge combo point is a little bit bugged. But that's how it works. You cast this button, and I've only seen 2, 3, and 4 as the ether charged amount of combo points, but you then are supposed to spend that number of combo points and you get a 7 combo point sized effect. Again, it looks like it's not perfectly implemented quite yet for Outlaw here, as it wasn't working on the 4 there, and the 3 it still looked like it wasn't quite doing 7 combo points worth of damage, but that is how it's going to work, and I think that's actually going to be pretty cool. The only thing that will mess you up on it is accidentally RNG, building an extra combo point over the number that you're shooting for. But I still think that this is going to be a cool playstyle. All 3 rogue specs have RNG combo point generation that can throw a wrench in this ability, but still a cool ability there. So happy to see that in. Anyways, those are just my first impressions of Outlaw Rogue. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to like and subscribe. Check out my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Dratnos. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you in the next one.